As Gen AI reshapes industries, understanding and leveraging its capabilities is no longer an option, it's a necessity. And that's exactly why at HatchWorks, we developed our Gen AI Innovation Workshop. In this workshop, we immerse you into a full day of learning, hands-on ideation, and building. We hit foundational concepts and show you how they relate to your domain. Then we develop actual use cases for your business and your industry. And we even build a custom GPT based on the use cases we define. Check out the link in the show notes or visit HatchWorks.com to get started today. Welcome to Built Right, a podcast by HatchWorks where we help you learn to build the right digital product the right way. In each episode, we'll deconstruct the layers of successful product development, break down popular trends, and offer real advice to help make sure your product is built right. We may not have all the answers, but we've built a lot of digital products across a lot of industries, and we've seen a thing or two. Let's get into it. We got a spicy one for you, Built Right listeners. Today, we're breaking down the 5 ways generative AI will change the way you think about UX and UI design. And by the way, number 2, I believe will actually create a complete shift in the way we think about designing and building software. So make sure to stick around for that one. But to help me do it today, I'm joined by HatchWorks' own Andy Silvestri, who brings 20 years of experience in the digital design space, including graphic design, creative design, user experience, customer experience, product strategy, all of the things. And he even ran his own experience strategy and design firm for 10 years prior to leading our product design practice here at HatchWorks. And he's a returning guest. So check out episode 2 if you like this one with Andy. But welcome back to the show, Andy.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It's good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you on. I'm really excited about this topic and this format that we're going to get into today. So we at HatchWorks have been digging into everything generative AI as of late, as it relates to the world of UX and UI design, specifically for this conversation, from testing new tools, talking to folks in the industry. And what we've done is we've distilled all of these learnings down to 5 key points, so you don't have to. And this includes how it's making things easier, better, faster, but also what we need to watch out for. And plus things that may sound completely foreign now, we believe this is going to be standard practice in the future. So trying to help you get ahead of that. So without further ado, Andy, let's get into number 1. So I'll key it up for us and let you take it from there. But number 1 is taking this shift from an imperative to a declarative design approach. So take us through that. Like, what does this mean and how is this going to evolve?
Yeah. So I think as practitioners, right, we're coming from this time of you point and click in the imperative fashion of doing everything, right? And now we're getting into this model, of course, where you can declare what you want from the tool, right? I can say, give me this, give me that, and the tool will use its AI powers to give you a result, right? So I think that that focus on moving more into this declarative kind of, approach to design is really an interesting one because, that idea of working along perhaps a design co-pilot of sorts where you have this running narrative with the generative AI tool that really has the potential to be a pretty big game changer. And not only from the standpoint of just a singular prompt and response where I'm hey, give me a design that has this, this, and this, and the thing gives it to you, but maybe more so the ability to work through a design brief and refining a narrative, tweaking things, adjusting things, that kind of stuff. So really it's this kind of dialogue you have with the machine, right? Yeah. And seeing that as having a really big kind of upside to streamlining the process, right? Especially for, smaller teams where it's maybe a design team of 1, right? And, maybe you're a startup, you have a smaller budget, right? So you're really kind of leveraging the tool as almost a co-pilot or another designer on your team. There are some tools out there that are kind of embracing this kind of dialogue approach. When there are lots of stuff in beta right now. So, it would be interesting to see where this goes, right? We've seen it from kind of the imagery perspective of give me a still image or give me an illustration. But still in the sense of like screen design, there are some big players who haven't really weighed in, specifically, Figma and by extension, Adobe. So it's going to be really interesting to see like what they bring to the table.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This one kind of, as you start to think about it, it blows my mind a bit because there's been so many best practices established with the way we've done things to date. Like there are heuristics, and some of that'll still stay around, but it's based on the human interacting with a machine in a particular way, right? And these generative AI tools and way of interacting with a machine via natural language, it's still got room for improvement. But I always look back to like cell phones back in the day when we were playing Snake, or the internet back in the day when we were dialing up on AOL. Like things have progressed so much, and you already see what's happening with generative AI, how fast it's progressing. Like this has the potential to really shift how we interact with technology, which really kind of flips on its head potentially how we've been doing things in a big way to date.
Yeah, 100%. There's always that kind of room for improvement, room for advancement. I think that we're seeing that right now in this moment with all these tools that are coming out. And you're really the hard part, I think, right now is staying on top of it all, right? Yeah. So it's been an interesting ride for sure.
I think it'll be interesting too. You think of this concept of like the innovator's dilemma. Take a Salesforce or a HubSpot, or that's how their whole solution's built. I mean, most solutions today. How are they going to adapt this new way of interacting with technology? Do they adapt it, make the shift, potentially upset some existing customers to try to stay ahead? Or is it going to be what we've seen so many times, newer competitors coming into the space without the bloat? And that gets back to an interesting point you just made. You may not need an army of people to do some of this stuff. So that it changes the game a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting subset of that. Like, example for what Adobe is currently doing with their AI tools, right? They're kind of slow rolling things into their existing product base, right? So you're seeing like a feature here and a feature there come into Photoshop or come into Illustrator, right? I think just today they released a color a modification tool piece within Illustrator, right? So, I mean, that's one approach, right? Is like kind of just tease it out, get a little bit of proof of concept, get a little bit of, traction around something before just kind of throwing a huge new application right in front of people, like kind of meet them where they are in their current workflows. So yeah, it's an interesting aspect of how all this stuff is coming together.
So that's number one, shift from imperative point and click to more of a declarative chat focused design, how that's going to impact user experience and something to stay on top of. Number two, and this is the one I called out earlier. I think this is one of the most interesting ones. I think it's the ability to get to proof of concept quicker. Some of this is obvious, but we've been playing around with some tools that, whether it's that tool or that concept or idea, and somebody else adopts it, but there's big potential here to really accelerate this process. But take us through this one.
Yeah, this is great. And I mean, this is probably, at least in my opinion, one of the biggest upsides to at least currently using generative AI in design. And, from both the standpoint of like low fidelity, medium fidelity, high fidelity, all those things, I think the idea is, why not use these tools when the stakes are low, right? Like if you're in a, kind of a ideation phase or a concepting phase, grinding out multiple iterations of flows, wireframes, interface concepts, components, anything to support a proof of concept, it's not really going to be a slog anymore, right? Like you want to get, using these tools to get directionally correct will take a lot less time, right? And, probably in an interesting way, people are kind of afraid of this idea of, it's going to replace designers completely. But I think it's actually going to open up the door for designers to become even more exploratory in those early ideation and concepting processes, right? Because you're going to have more time because you're not necessarily doing all the heavy lift in the back end. So if, for example, I can say to a tool, hey, I need, 3 concepts of, this, and this, and give it some requirements and kind of work through that prompting. And then take what it gives me and then leverage what it's given me to kind of, refine it further as needed. It's a big step up from just, okay, I got to make 3 concepts and I got to think through every single piece. So, I think this is going to be a really big lift in terms of workflow. And again, like in that earlier phase, I think is when it's going to be most profound in terms of just kind of saving time.
Yeah, you think of how we interact with our clients today, that upfront piece, like, it gets shortened so much. You almost could think of this world in the future where you're in a workshop and you're actually getting an idea like as you're working through the workshop, right? And then there's the debate of,
Yeah.
okay, well, is uh, whiteboard still superior because if you start to get real looking designs, the discussion immediately shifts to color and placement and not the core functioning
Sure.
piece of things, right?
Right. And I think that's where like kind of
yeah,
like the tactful use of those tools in those scenarios, I think is what's going to be paramount, right? Because you can think about that of, yeah, we might be going through and doing a workshop, getting some stuff on the whiteboard with a client. We come back and we say, okay, give us a week to turn around some rough proofs of concept. That might be, let's do it right now, with what we just ideated through and see what we can get. But of course, like to your point, leveraging it at the fidelity that makes the most sense so that, yeah, you don't jump too far ahead or get down a rabbit hole and get kind of distracted from like the discovery task at hand. Right. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good way to think about it of like, let's put the concept and let's create like the artifact for it much more in a much, lighter lift and use that to kind of, further the conversation. So that's what I mean by kind of getting it, getting quicker and getting like, getting to the concept, and getting it kind of out the door, in an efficient manner.
yeah. And you mentioned 1.2. So it's two things. In my view, I've heard some others express this too. The minimum bar, is going to be raised or lowered, I guess, in whichever way you look at it, in terms of like, it's going to be so much easier to do stuff. Right. But I think to your point, it elevates the true practitioners, the true designers, that skill set. It's like back to the Renaissance. Like, it's the artists, it's those folks that start to become more empowered. And I think that's the future, is those type of folks become even more important, critically important, as this new technology starts to take shape.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
All right. So that's number two, getting to this proof of concept quicker. Multiple iterations of proof of concept testing, that whole idea of the agile mindset, it just accelerates things. But getting to number three, this is more of the cautionary tale one. So exercise caution when leveraging generative AI tools and solutions. So take us through the more doomsday one on the list here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think this is kind of like, a good one to think about in that it highlights the need for curation, I think, like now more than ever, right? Like, and I mean that from the sense that it's not just about proofing the quality of what comes back from these tools, but, proofing for bias, proofing for inaccuracies. Copyright infringement's been in, a lot of the conversation around using some of these tools, right? So, there's still a very real need, I think, for a designer's eye to want, going back to what you were just saying about the Renaissance, right? Like there's still a need for like this skill set. And we will still need to employ, I think, a very good bit of common sense when we're using these tools, right? Like right now, whenever we kind of, are looking through things that we see in the space that are generated via AI, there's a bit of like a tell or like a look and feel that I think this imagery is taking on, right? Like maybe there's odd angles, the shadows are off, depth of field is not quite right, proportions are weird, the thing I think about is kind of like when Photoshop became more mainstream and like Photoshop turned into a verb, like you could tell that something had been Photoshopped, right? Like, and I think people that have been doing this for a while kind of are seeing that kind of tell of like, oh, AI is doing this and something's not quite right. So, I mean, that's one way to think about it. I guess the scary thing is, just in what we've seen in the last couple months of this, this stuff becoming mainstream is how good will it get, right? Like if you see the increase in quality that, just a few months of, since ChatGPT dropped in the market, right? And there's this increased focus on more sophisticated prompting, and prompt engineering is becoming like a real thing. And people are learning more about how to use these tools and interact with them. So like very soon, like very, very soon, that tell, may be indiscernible from reality. So that's the one thing that's kind of like, okay, let's use curation. Let's curate this. Let's make sure that we are using a bit of common sense, and maybe that goes into how we actually disseminate the work in an honest fashion, right? Like, somehow indicating that this was made using AI tools to help with the design, that kind of thing. So it's very interesting times. We're kind of still in that gray area, right? But I think that, with good practice, we'll get there.
Yeah, and there's going to be instances we saw recently. This is more Chat GPT focused, but the lawyer that was creating a legal brief off of Chat GPT, and it completely hallucinated, just completely false information. And what does that begin to look like on more of the design side? I think that'll be interesting to see. To your point, like, does it look like it's been produced through generative AI? Is that a negative, connotation there? But you mentioned it earlier. It's this concept of co-pilot. That's the important piece. It's your co-pilot. It's not, set it and forget it. What was it? Was that the George Foreman grill back in the day? Or one of those?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, but you said it. I mean, like, it's kind of interesting, right? Like, just as like Photoshop coming to the masses, like, allowed a lot more people to, manipulate their imagery and quite frankly, do better work with the types of photos they were taking. This is a similar kind of effect, right? Where it's not all bad, right? I mean, just because something has been AI'd, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad thing for, just again, access, raising that baseline, getting more people into design, getting familiar with the tools. I think that's a, kind of a silver lining to this kind of cautionary doom and gloom kind of outlook to AI replacing jobs and things like that. So again, very interesting taking the good with the bad, but, we'll see where it goes.
So this, generative AI kind of democratizing AI and potentially design related things, good or bad, in your opinion?
I think it's a good thing, right? I think the more we as society can get better with the tools, of course, there's always a negative side to new technology, and there's people that are going to, use it for negative things, and bad actors. Yeah, all that stuff's going to happen. But I think generally speaking, the more empowered people can be with these tools, and, actually, again, at the end of the day, if it's delivering value to folks, right, and they're seeing a benefit to using this technology, then I'm all for it. But again, there's two ways to look at it, of course. Right? So.
Yeah, you hit on the core thing. It's all about value at the end of the day. And we talk a lot about that at HatchWorks, delivering and owning the outcome. But it goes back to like the .com era. You slap .com on anything, the concept of value just completely got ignored. And there's some of that going on today where it's the hype train of, there's a new generative AI tool out every day, multiple ones, but do they provide value? Are they defensible? Do they have some kind of differentiated moat when you can spin something up on a weekend? Probably not, right? So I think that it's that back to first principles is still going to hold true. Even with this.
Yeah, right on.
All right. So that is number 3, the cautionary tale with generative AI tools. Number 4, I like this one. So this is impact to creation and utilization of design systems. For me, this gets to like easier standardization, just like mundane tasks, get them out of here. But take us through this one.
Yeah, sure. And this is kind of like, a click deeper to what we were talking about earlier around like, developing whole concepts via prompting. So like, this is more, I think, when you get into that stage of finalizing a design, right? There's a lot of work that now has to be done for preparing that to be taken further in the delivery lifecycle, right? So leveraging the automation aspects of what these tools have is, I think, potentially a big kind of speed up in terms of a designer's workflow, right? Like, if you could imagine just simply making a design and then prompting a tool to say, generate the components for color, typography, the focus states from what I just designed. And it's like, boom, there it is. Or, take the design system, decrease all the color gradations we have by 10%, and boom, it's all done. You don't have to go in and do all that, individual legwork. So while it sounds like little stuff, all of that from the standpoint of a design team's effort can really add up and, shave a lot of time. So I think this is really a powerful kind of aspect of like that latter stage of finalization design, not just within kind of like pulling components apart for the sake of delivery, but also in kind of refinement. It's very similar, I think, to, a time when the concept of reusable symbols and components were introduced in interface design programs like Sketch, right? Like it really changed the way we as designers thought about our workflow. It's like, oh, I can create this one component or this one symbol that I can use an infinite number of times within my design system. Great. Like, it was a huge efficiency gain for a lot of, people's day to day. And again, I think like we're kind of, in that moment with these tools coming to light of like, how does it come into a workflow? How does it kind of shave off or make, things that much easier? And I think that's again, where like the real value and the real adoption is going to take place. So whomever in whatever fashion comes out with, the killer app when it comes to like design systems. And again, this is why I was talking about Figma earlier, because a lot of the industry is kind of waiting to see, what their move is when it comes to, generative AI and kind of, baking it into their whole, their software suite. These are interesting times, and it's the stuff that will impact, 100% of how we approach, our workflows as designers here at HatchWorks too. So, really interesting stuff, really looking forward to like learning more and more and, kicking the tires on even more tools.
Yeah. And, everybody that's listening, the whole summation there, it's speed to value, right? It's helping increase speed to value, efficiency, all of that. But for the listeners that may not be acquainted with what a design system even is, like what is a design system? Gives just some context for what that is, why you have design systems, the value of them. So I think it's a piece that's kind of overlooked sometimes if you're building products and you're not as acquainted with user experience, UI design, things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, at its core, a design system is really kind of the foundations of what makes up the visualization or the interactive elements of your product, your solution, whatever it is that you're designing, right? So, you can think about there's kind of the atomic method of breaking things down to the atomic level of like, this is our very small elements that build up into molecules, that build up into organisms, et cetera, right? So, having a system of all of those components within your design is really, again, the foundational part. And, I can, as a designer or someone who owns that design system for a specific product or a brand, shepherd that and work through, okay, do we need to make updates to colors? Do we make updates to our typography suite? All of that kind of thing. Those are the nitty gritty pieces that all kind of, again, funnel back up to what you see in the final interaction, the final interface. So again, that's why there's a lot of, components to design systems that need to be managed and overseen. And, again, with these AI tools coming to light, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot more efficiency to be interjected into that whole workflow. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think to your point, what's going to be interesting, at least what I'm interested in, is it going to be your Figmas, obviously your Adobes, the large players, are they going to adapt to these things and win in the market? Or are you going to have smaller players, which is like a Figma, like they have a moat established, people are bought in and they use that solution? Are new players going to be able to come in by advancing and kind of leapfrogging here, or they, plugging into those type of solutions? Do you think it is going to be kind of the big players out there that ultimately win? They may take a little more time to actually build this into their solutions, or do you think it's more of a newcomer space?
Yeah, I mean, the established players definitely have a leg up, right? Like especially Figma, who now has Adobe in their corner, right? So they have the resource to push this stuff through more quickly. But that's not to say that a new player couldn't come out of left field and really nail all of the core value prop that, a Figma does, and add on top of it with something related to generative AI and beat them to the punch. I mean, it's completely feasible. And there are groups out there, I've seen Buzzy, I've seen UWizard, all these kinds of things that are, they are their own ecosystems, but like, maybe this is maybe this is the time that a new player comes out and takes the crown. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we look back as far as Figma, and they were, they're a little bit older, but they definitely came in and just stole the show. All right, so that is number 4, the impact in creating and utilizing design systems. It's going to be big there. It's getting rid of all the mundane kind of tasks that, designers really, they can focus on more important stuff. The last one, this is, I mentioned the POC one is the most impactful But this one's critical. I love this one. It's the importance of keeping your users actively engaged when they're in co-pilot mode so they don't crash the plane. What does this mean? And this is thinking about the users of generative AI or your products and services that leverage generative AI. Take us through this one.
Right. Yeah, and I love this notion. I think it's like, this idea of, generative AI is just going to allow us to just prompt, do whatever, and then kind of go about our day and do the really important things. But I think it's really more kind of an opportunity for us as practitioners to be diligent. And I think, quite frankly, this is why I think we'll always have jobs as designers, because, even with the assistance of generative AI, all of these potential big wins we've talked about in terms of automation, a human is still responsible for creating a good experience for other humans, right? So you have to factor in what it is that other people want in a service or product, right? And make sure that you're delivering on that. So no matter how quickly or efficiently you get there, you still have to test concepts. You still have to gather feedback from real people. You have to synthesize that feedback. You have to act upon the feedback, put it into a roadmap, work on it, right? I think generally one way to think about it is that just because we have all these tools that are, kind of, taking the place, of other humans, you're not going to take the human out of human-centered design, right? So we're still going to need to be able to be diligent and oversee and shepherd this work, as I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, as long as, the solutions we're building are for humans, I think that's 100% true. I wonder if some point, though, you do have these, AI type agents and you're building experiences and solutions for them. What does that look like? And maybe they're just completely headless. It's just the API layer and making the, everything easy and accessible. That'll be an interesting evolution if things change in that way.
Yeah. Well, with the speed we're going, I mean, again, I was, going back to what we were talking about earlier with like, how quickly it's evolving, how much things are adapting to, people prompting better, doing better things. Like, how are we going to, like, what is going to be in 3 months, 6 months, another year from now, right? I mean, we're kind of talking, we're looking back over the course of only a handful of months right now. And, so much stuff has come to the market. So many ideas are out there. The opportunity to really embrace this area and lean into it, as practitioners is really, really fascinating. And so, again, I mean, may the best tool win, right? That's the way I see it. Is if it's going to be, improving our workflows as designers, if it's going to be increasing value to end users, if it's going to be making really any aspect of, the design process just a little bit easier, even if it's that little bit of an efficiency gain, I think it's worth it. And it's something that we can, continue to work through and learn from. So. Yeah, really exciting times, and a lot more to look at. We have a list, as Matt, you mentioned, we have a list of tools that we're looking through that's just, it seems like it gets longer and longer by the day. So,
yeah, we got a Notion board of about 100 tools, I feel like, that we're going in and testing. And one thing we're doing too, kind of off topic, but we're creating what are our, guidelines to using these tools, which is important for organizations to think through. If we're just testing a tool internally for an internal project or solution we're building, great. That's one level. If we're doing something on a client project that, is potentially exposing client data or something like that, that's another level of consideration. So that's one thing we're defining at HatchWorks. And I encourage every other organization to do the same. And it's about creating a standard, set of practices and just agreed upon rules of how you engage with these tools, right?
Right. Yeah, 100%. I think it's super important getting back to that kind of curation beyond just the quality of what you're getting back from these tools, right? It's about, is it ethical? Is it accurate? Is it not infringing on copyrights? All of that kind of stuff. And then, is it not exposing you to risk, right? There is a very real factor there that I think a lot of, there's just all this gray area that everybody's going to have to kind of take their own path through, and decide like what's right for their organization. But I think, a lot of those kinds of considerations, the more you can define them, talk through them, make sure you have a plan or at least an approach, formulated, the better off you'll be, because we're not going to see the end of new tools coming out and new weird deep fakes and stuff like that. And people, again, being bad actors and leveraging the tools in not so nice ways. So
Yeah, another offshoot too. Like we're playing around with Firefly, Adobe's version of, like Midjourney, and you can actually now prompt in there the type of camera lens you're using and things like that. It's just taking it to a whole nother level for better or for worse. But to your point earlier, it's like, what jobs are going to exist that don't even exist today? Like you think back before pre-internet, this all kinds of jobs that exist now that never existed previously. Do you think we're going to have that kind of stepwise change from generative AI? Is it that level of impact, or you think it's somewhere less, somewhere more? Where do you think? Play fortune teller for us.
Yeah, I think within a year or two, you're going to see prompt engineering on everybody's resume, right? I think that's the next step. Is maybe not that it's wholly different, job titles or roles, but it's more skill set building, right? So I think in the near term, the more and more, that becomes mainstream in terms of understanding how to interact with these tools, as we were kind of talking through. The more valuable that's going to be as an individual, like if I have that skill and I've invested in that, and also to an organization who's, leaning into these tools, like understanding how to talk to the robots is going to be a really big deal. So yeah, that's all I can say. I mean, right now though, yeah, we might see in, 5 years from now that there is a prompt designer. I don't know, like something like that, or an AI designer, somebody who's, got their little, their sidekick. That's the AI. I don't know.
And I guarantee you will see required skills, 10 years of experience with, the tool that's been out there.
Right, yeah.
So that's guaranteed to be out there. All right. So the 5, just to recap, the number 1, shift from imperative point and click to a declarative chat focused design. It's changing how we think about user experience. Ability to get to proof of concept quicker. Again, speed to value, speed to testing, agile taken to the next level. Number 3, exercising caution when leveraging generative AI tools and solutions. Number 4, impact to creation and utilization of design systems. Get the mundane stuff out of there. And then number 5, don't crash the plane. Be considerate of users actively engaging with the solution. And at one point, like you see this with Tesla, they require you to, I think, touch the steering wheel ever so often. But it's just to remind you that you are engaged with the thing. But really, really enjoy the conversation today, Andy. And for those that are looking to go a little bit deeper on generative AI, we got the blog out there on generative AI. We're doing one specific to software development. We'll have another one coming out specific to UX and design. And we'll link to some of those in the show notes. And then we also have I believe it's episode 8. It was our Built Right live podcast we did with Jason Slachter. Go check that one out. This guy is insanely smart. Leads AI empowerment group right now. Used to be leading AI products at Elevance Health. So, tons of experience with a lot of crazy stuff. And there we get into the idea of how do you validate and, identify winning generative AI use cases for your business. So don't miss that. But thanks for joining us today, Andy.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks as always. And let's talk more about AI, because I think in another 6 months, we're going to have a whole nother layer of topics to talk about. So
it'll keep evolving. We'll look back at this and we can kind of test our hypotheses we've had. All right. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for listening to Built Right. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. For more info on Built Right, visit us at HatchWorksBuiltRight.com. Do you already have a Gen AI use case in mind for your business, but don't know where to get started? HatchWorks Gen AI Accelerator is exactly what you need. We guide you from ideation to a tangible prototype. Our approach provides a low-risk, high-value pathway for you to validate and test Gen AI technology on a small scale before committing to full production. We take you through technology and LLM selection, perform data preparation, and then build the actual prototype. And then we do testing and model fine-tuning of your prototype. The best part is we get you to this prototype in just 2 to 8 weeks based on the scope of your use case. Check out the link in the show notes or visit hatchworks.com to get started today.